I'm your host, the Catman, Brian Cataquet, a.k.a. the Card King. We are live on ABC's KMET 1490 AM.com, your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. I thank everyone for tuning in this morning. On the telephone line, I welcome to the program a former Major League Baseball pitcher who played 10 seasons for the Milwaukee Brewers from 1975 to 1984. I welcome to the program Jerry Augustine. Jerry, great to have you. Thanks for being on.
Oh, Brian, great to be with you. Baseball just started. We're just at opening day. Everything's in swing, and I'm looking forward to a great season in Major League Baseball.
Oh, my pleasure. Me too. We need the spring. It's always nice when baseball season's around the corner. Augie, it's seldom that you find an athlete who has played high school, college, and pro ball in their native state. But, you're one of them. And I read something, I don't know if this is true, an interview you did prior to being drafted in 1974. You never seen a Major League Baseball game. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. In fact, I was drafted by Milwaukee in the 15th round in 1974. And when I got a call from the Brewers, the scout that signed me, Emil Bellick, said, how does it feel to be drafted into the major leagues? I said, I've watched it on TV. I've been a staunch fan. I've always wanted to be a major league player, but I've never seen a major league game. And as the first game I ever saw in the big leagues was the Oakland A's against the Milwaukee Brewers. And that's the night I signed with the Brewers after I was drafted in 1974.
That's really difficult to believe. And, just going through your career, reading your biography, all eyes were definitely on you around 1972-73, playing for the University of Wisconsin, in which you posted a 14-win season with 186 strikeouts, selected to the All-Wisconsin State University Conference first team, all-star member. How was it playing for the University of Wisconsin?
Well, we're a Division III school in the state of Wisconsin, and it was a really good baseball conference. When you look at when I played you go back and look at Jim Gantner, who played with the Brewers, and now you're seeing a lot of major league players, or especially professional ball players, that are drafted out of that conference. So the conference was really a good conference, and there were probably three teams in that conference each and every year that battled against each other. It was us at the University of Wisconsin lacrosse. It was Oshkosh and Stevens Point. Usually we're all right there playing baseball, but it was just not only that, it was the summer teams. You got to play against these guys in the summer teams around the state of Wisconsin. So a great education I got. I was born on the eastern side of the state, but went to school on the western side of the state. But I really enjoyed it. Got my degree, and then being drafted by Milwaukee was really an honor.
Really an honor. And, 1974, pivotal year, as we mentioned, you were drafted by the Brewers. Take us back to exactly, were you shocked at the time that the Brewers selected you in 1974?
Well, I was kind of shocked because prior to that year, I had worked out for the Minnesota Twins, and they were very interested, told me that, I went up to a scout day and they liked it. I did very well up there. So I thought, I might be with the Minnesota Twins. But then as my season went along, my senior year in college, I started getting talking with a lot of different teams. As the Pirates and the Kansas City and about 10 teams. And I actually, after I was done with the school conference, there were days when they would call me and ask me to come out and throw at the ballpark. They would bring catchers. I would throw for them. So there was probably a host of 10 teams that had contacted me. The Brewers scout, Emil Bellick, I was always in contact. He always talked to me, never mentioned a whole lot about drafting, but ended up being drafted by Milwaukee, and I was really honored.
Yeah, that's really great. And, so you were selected number 15 in the 74 draft. Where were you exactly that day where you found out you were being drafted? What exactly were you doing? Take us back to that pivotal time in your life.
Well, it was after my senior year in college, and everybody told me that I was actually my junior in college with the rules that they had by the draft. I was too young to be drafted by about 65 days. And so I couldn't be drafted my junior year, but everybody said your senior year, you'll probably go in as a senior draft. So that day, I was actually, my best friend and I played for a team on the outside of of lacrosse, a team by the name of Bangor, Wisconsin, and we had a lot of guys from our college team on that team, and we played it all around the state. So, but that day I was with my best friend. We had just gotten a job in a lumber mill, and so that day, the day of draft, I got up that morning, went out with my best friend, was at the lumber mill, and about noon that day, I got a call from the head guy at the lumberyard. He said, "You need to come to the office immediately." I went to the office, answered the phone, and sure enough, it was Emil Bellick, or it was the Milwaukee Brewers that called me and told me I was drafted, that they would be back in touch with me in the next couple of days, and that's where it started from there.
We're talking with the former Milwaukee Brewer pitcher who played from 75 to 84, Jerry Augustine, who's on the telephone line. So 1975, you're playing for Sacramento in the PCL League. Well, let me ask you this. What was your first, how did you experience the minor league, hitters at the time in 1974 when you first got on a minor league baseball field? Were they challenging, different from collegiate, huh?
It was a little bit different for me, but once I was drafted and I got my dream. I just focused on what I could do to be the best I could be. I didn't know much about baseball. I was going to be in a different state. I never played baseball outside the state a whole lot other than in college. And so it was a little bit different. What actually happened, I was drafted in 74 and the Brewers sent me out to their rookie league. And my first roommate was Moose Haas, who played with the Brewers for a number of years. He was my first professional roommate. But I went there and I threw 2 days of batting practice out in Newark, New York for the rookie team. And I got called into the office by John Telsky, and he told me, he says, "Hey, I got some news for you." And I said, "Oh boy, 2 days of pitching, I'm going to be released or whatever?" And he goes, No, you've been elevated. We're sending you to the Midwest League, was where my home is in the Midwest. And that day I flew out of Newark, New York. I flew into Quad Cities. I got there during the game. In fact, I got there in about the fourth inning of the game. Put my uniform on, walked in, met my manager, Matt Galani, at that time, and ended up pitching 2 extra innings, and got the win that day. Got to start 2 days later, and I was in my first 2 major league games are professional games. I got 2 wins in as a reliever and as a starter, but it was a different experience. I was excited about it, and all of a sudden, it just seemed from the good pitching coaches that I had in the minor leagues, and Matt Galani was my first manager, did an outstanding job of me, allowed me to learn as I wanted to go, and I ended up having a real good year that first year. In fact, each and every time our general manager Jim Ballmer came to a game, I either threw a shutout or I pitched very well. So, and that right there, that year got me to go to spring training in 1975 with the Major League Club.
Man, so 1974, that was playing for Danville Warriors?
That's right.
Yeah, and that team, if I recall, it had some Major League ball players, right? Sam Hines was on the squad, Dick Davis, I believe.
Yes, we had a really good ball club. We had a couple of really good pitchers. Lafayette Currents was there. Jerry O'Neill was there. There was a couple of other pitchers that made it to the majors. We were a team that the first half of the season, I didn't get there till a little bit later in the first half of the season because I was drafted that year. But the second half of the season, we won the second half, ended up going into the playoffs and won the playoffs and won the league that year. So we had some really good teams. There's guys that made it as high as Steve Bowling made it as high as AAA, and a lot of good players. But I think the club and being able to play there, being able to experience the Midwest League, and then really helped me propel to the major leagues. And again, I was very fortunate where I pitched some very good games in front of the right people, and then was added to the roster and going to major league camp the following year.
Yeah, and then like 75, you're playing for the PCL League, like I mentioned, with Sacramento. A team that had a player like Bob Hansen, who led that team in home runs. Bob Hansen and Tommy Bianco, also former Major League ball players. Now, was your manager at Sacramento Harry Bright?
Yes, he was. Harry was actually, he lived in in Sacramento, and he was our manager. We had a lot of really good players on that ball club. It's just that if you remember, and a lot of people don't remember, the Sacramento ballpark down the left field line was 232 with a 30-foot high fence. Straight center was 310. Down the right field line was about 300. So baseball, it was played in like a football stadium. The ball flew out pretty much. We gave up a lot of runs. If you pitched and had an ERA under 6 there, you did awesome. And so it was a tough place to play, but a great experience. And actually what happened in 1975, I was sent to Major League Camp. My first day in Major League Camp, I was covering first base, and they had put some new type of turf down, sand down with the base pass, and I hit that and I tore my knee up. At that time, they drained my knee. They told me I would not pitch anymore that year, sent me to Milwaukee. I had surgery, and then I worked myself back, and I was very fortunate in that I lived from Wisconsin. I was able to, when the Major League team was in Milwaukee, I got to work out with them. And then when I was fully healthy, they thought I could pitch. I put some batting practice for the Brewers against like George Scott and Robin was there, and all these great players were there at that time. I got to pitch some batting practice. They liked what they saw, so they sent me to AAA, and that's what really gave me a good opportunity to really learn how to pitch in Sacramento because it was such a small ballpark.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed about your career, I mean, you lasted in the minor leagues pretty short before that big move, to the major leagues. And I've spoken to a lot of athletes on this program. They spend a lifetime in the minor leagues, and they don't even get up to the major leagues. One thing about you is that it was very quick. You were about a year, 74 to 75 in the minor leagues, and then you move up to the big show. So that's pretty impressive.
Well, you know what? I was lucky. First of all, I went to the rookie camp and got right up to the Midwest League by probably the end of June, early July, when they started the second half, and then going to spring training and tearing up my knee and thinking that I was not going to pitch that year. But very fortunate enough for the Brewers. Actually, I did all my rehab in Milwaukee with the Major League Ball Club, and then throwing batting practice to all the players like Don Money and these guys that were Major League players. They said, they liked what they saw, so they sent me to AAA. So when you add all the games that I was 74 and 75, I probably had just one total year in the minor leagues. And then what happened was in September that year, I finished up the year very well in AAA, and all of a sudden I flew home. In fact, we ended the season in AAA and the PCL in Hawaii. I flew home to Green Bay, Wisconsin. I lived in Kewaunee, Wisconsin. And about 4 days later, I got a call from the general manager saying that I was going to be called up to the big leagues. And boy, I'll tell you, talk about exciting. I didn't need a car. I did not need a car to drive to Milwaukee. I could have ran there in a heartbeat. So very exciting, a great opportunity, and I was extremely lucky.
Right, and you won your first big game against my home team. I'm from New York City. You beat the Yankees. You beat the Yankees. So take us back to that first major league debut. How was the adrenaline?
Okay, the first time I got in, it was actually I got to the park that day, and I was the first day. I talked to the manager, Dale Crandall, Harry, and he said, are you ready to throw? And I said, sure. And I did a little side workout that day, and they liked what they saw. And he said, are you ready to go? And I said, yes, I am. That night, I warmed up like 6 times, didn't get in the ball game. We were playing the Baltimore Orioles. The next night, I warmed up about 3 times, got in the game, just pitched 1 inning, and then we went to New York and Boston. In New York, I got to pitch a couple innings against the Yankees at Old Shea Stadium when they were renovating Yankee Stadium. And then from Boston, we were flying home, and all of a sudden, the manager walked up to me. He said, "How do you feel today?" And I said, "I feel great." He said, "I just want to let you know you're starting that tonight." So it was really exciting. I had a lot of people calling. They wanted to come to the game, and it was hard because we flew from Boston to Milwaukee, didn't get in till like noon, and then I went to get a bite to eat, went right to the ballpark. But I had a lot of family there. It was a great start. I was honored to pitch against the Yankees, my first start in the big leagues, and ended up having a good outing. I was very fortunate. I got to the 9th inning with I think it was a 5-1 or 5-2 lead, and Tom Murphy came in and threw a double play ball, and I won my first game in the big leagues. So to face the Yankees and Billy Martin and all the things that went on with the Yankees, who are such a great ball club, was really a big honor. And to win my first game as a starter in the major leagues was I'll never forget it.
And the scouting report on you, Jerry, back then was that you were a competitive player and you had a really good curveball. Would you say your curveball was your money pitch?
Well, I say actually, I think any pitcher in Major League Baseball has to have a fastball, and they have to locate your fastball. And the one thing that I was very blessed with, I wasn't an overpowering pitcher. I would say that I was a 90, 91, 92 guy, but I had a lot of movement. I could make the ball sink tail away from right-handers, or I could cut the ball and move in with a four-seamer. And I think I was able to spot those. But I really threw what they would call a serve or a serve-style pitch. And what I was able to do, I was able to throw it and make it cut short or back off on it and make it look like a big curveball. So I was able to do that on my own. I very seldom did the catcher have to call it. I kind of did it just because of my experience and the way I used it in college and my career, but that became a big pitch for me. But I would say as I went along, I went more to a slurve slider, a harder pitch, and it looked like a breaking ball, and I was able to command it. I could throw it at any time. So being able to command the fastball, both sides of play with that curveball or slider, whatever you want to call it, really helped me in my professional career.
Yeah, going through some of your highlights, 1976, selected Rookie of the Year winner for the Brewers, and you dominated, there was one game you dominated the Angels, I think you beat them 3-0. You were really good. Looking at your record, you beat the Angels a lot in your carear. You actually mastered them.
Yeah, Angels were one team that I always pitched very well against. I had several shutouts against them. I remember I pitched the game in California where it was like 1 hour and 47 minutes. I won like 2-0 against. I'm trying to think of the guy's name who I pitched against, but I had a lot of success against the California Angels as well as the Yankees and some of the other teams. So it was just a matter of when you get in the game and you're able to command your pitches and really the good command of the fastball and being able to keep people off stride with my curveball. I didn't really have a changeup at that time or a bona fide over-the-top curveball, but I changed speeds with that curveball and been able to pitch on both sides of the plate. Getting ahead of hitters was very important and really helped me in my career.
Yeah, like I said, 76, you beat the Angels like 3 times. You had a 1.2, something like that, ERA against that team. And then by 77, you were the Brewers' top winner. You led the club in complete games. You had like something like 12 wins and 10 complete games. So 77, I would say that was your best year. Would you agree with that or no?
Well, I think when you look at my second year in the big leagues in 75 and 76, 77, I believe it was 76 or 77 where I had 10 wins at the All-Star break. And I was 10-9 at the All-Star break, and I was up in the statistics for American League pitchers. I was throwing the ball very well. The second half of the season, I just really struggled. I think, when you look back on your career and you say, well, what happened there? Did you pitch any differently? I just couldn't win games. There's games where I didn't pitch very well. I gave a lot of runs up early in the game. But there were a lot of games where I was in it till the last, very deep in the ball game. I would lose like 3-2, 2-1, 4-3, and it just didn't work out well. But I would say that year was probably as far as innings pitched, starts. Very seldom that I missed a start. That's one thing that I'm very proud of. That when I was a starter, I started whenever my number was called. So it was very important that I get out there. But then as it went on in 78 with George Bamberger, I started out opening day. I pitched opening day in 78, and Bambi said to me, our bullpen's really struggling, and you have an arm that can throw every day. So would you be willing to go to bullpen? I said, Bambi, anytime we can, George Bamberger, I told him anytime I can help a club, I would do that. So I went to the bullpen after that, and I enjoyed it. It was fun, just so I could play in the major leagues and be challenged. It was a lot of fun, but as a starter, I really enjoyed starting. I think the biggest thing that hurt me is probably as a starter was the mental part of the game. Today in baseball, that's one of the things. Everybody's got got the abilities to throw different pitches, but that mental part of the game has to be really strong.
Yeah, and I'm looking at these stats. Some of your stats. 78 that season, you pitched two 2-hitters, 2 3-hitters games, and 2 5-hitters in 78. 78, you posted like a 4-1 record with a 2.48 ERA. Player of the month for June 78. So you had a good June month in 78. Was that the year I believe you posted a 13-12 record? So you did start in a lot of games that year, 78.
Yeah, I did. Well, starting the season when George Bamberger took over, it was really kind of a neat thing. He took over in the month of November, and being announced and living in Milwaukee, because I'm from Wisconsin, we lived there year round. All the players, Jim Gander, all the players that were Charlie Moore and some of the guys that were all lived in Milwaukee at that time, all came when they announced George was taking over. And after he was announced, he did a press conference, and then he came up to me, called me, says, "Hey, before you leave, stop in my office." So I said, "Okay, fine," because he was the pitching coach of the Baltimore Orioles. He had seen me pitch a number of times. Called me in the office, sat me down. He says, "Augie, I just want to tell you one thing. Going into spring training, I want you to start right now. I want you to start getting focused. I have you already listed for the number of games you're going to pitch in spring training, and then what you're going to do is you're going to open up our season. So get ready." And, what an honor for a manager that just knows you from an opposing team to call you in and say, "Hey, you know what? You're opening up against his former team, the Baltimore Orioles, the 78 season, was quite an honor." So, really a neat experience. George, really made a lot for me, helped me a lot in my career, and along with Calvin McClish. And it was really a good experience to say, hey, a coach just gets his job, and already he announces you as the opening day starter.
Yeah, and even, just looking at the 79 season, you were already honored as the Brewers relief pitcher of the year for that season. I mean, you had something like a 600 winning percentage. You won 9-6 record with 5 saves. You had a 5-1 win over a period of stretch, a long stretch that season in 79. So how was that transition from starter to reliever?
Well, I think when you're with a baseball team, you got to look and see what are your strengths. And George, the one thing about George Bamberger is he really understood pitching. And when he's a guy who coached 20 game winners in Baltimore, he understood it. And I think what he wanted to do is he wanted to make the staff as good as it possibly can be. I can remember in 1978 in spring training, he took all the pitchers into a room and he wrote a number on the board. And he said, "Boys, this is the number of walks you had in the previous year, 1977. I'm going to tell you one thing. If you cut it down by 25%, you know what? We're going to have a really good year. If you cut it down by 30 to 35%, we're going to win this division." We cut it down the walks by about 20% or 25%. And if you look at 78, we were 6 games out of first place. And what Bamberger did at that time, I was starting, and I went through a little bit of a struggle. So he said, "You know what? I want to utilize your arm the best I can. I'm going to put you in a bullpen and get you as much use as I can." And that's what he did. I threw a lot out of the bullpen. I was his number one guy, lefty out of bullpen. And you remember back then, you just didn't get a save when you pitched one inning. You had to pitch more than one inning to get a save. So it was a great experience. I liked it. And it was a year that I'll remember because I started the first half of the season and threw the ball pretty well, but then was able to help the ball club also at the end of the season.
And Jerry, I have a couple of minutes left. I want to get these 2 questions in. You were obviously there with a young Robin Yount. I was too young to see Yount in the mid 70s. Was he as good when he came up? Was he that good as everyone said he is or he was?
Extremely talented. When you talk about Robin, he was my first spring training. He was my first spring training roommate, believe it or not. And he lived in Arizona, so he spent a lot of time living with his brother. But he's extremely talented. You could see when he went out to play, he was extremely talented. I think the one thing about Robin, and you can talk about all the great guys, the Paul Molitors and the Don Suttons and the Brawley Fingers, Hall of Famers that I had the opportunity to play with. they all have that common trend that you see in a great professional ball player. When they cross the lines, they're extremely focused. And I think that's one thing that I really respected about the guys that I played with, and especially Robin. When he crossed that line, it was about winning and all about winning. It wasn't about, hey, you're going to have some parts of the game aren't going to be good, some maybe great, but it's about winning the ball game and giving the best you can. And that's what Robin did. And when you see anybody who is an MVP at short and MVP in center field has to have an extreme amount of talent, and that's what Robin did. But the focus with Robin Yount, when you talk about the mental side of the game of baseball, being like he was, so professional and such a hardworking guy, there aren't many ball players that played the game of baseball that did it as well as Robin Yount.
Man, then in 75, 76, I mean, you shared the dugout with the great Hank Aaron. He became a Brewer. I mean, how is Hank Aaron? Did the young kids look up to that figure?
Well, first of all, Henry Aaron, or Hank Aaron, was my all-time great idol. Him and Eddie Matthews and Warren Spahn and Lou Burdett. I could go through the whole lineup for those guys, Joe Adcock and those guys, Billy Boot and those guys. But the first time when I was called up to the big leagues when I was called up in 1975 at the end of the season, I walked in the clubhouse, and when you walked in the clubhouse, Hank's locker was the third locker. I walked in, I was so amazed that I just stood there for about 10 minutes, and then Bob Sullivan, our equipment manager, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, kid, you can go to your locker now." And so the pitch on the same team with Hank Aaron, I had the honor of pitching in the last game. He hit number 755. It was against the California Angels. He did in Milwaukee. I pitched that game. We won it 7-2 or whatever the score was. He hit his final home run. I got to pitch on Hank Aaron night in Milwaukee, where he played the Yankees. I think the Yankees beat us that day, 4-3 in 12 innings. So just to be a teammate and watch how he carried himself and how much he loved the game. And, you know, when you talk about Hank Aaron, as great as he was, and is probably one of the best ball players, if not the best of all time, he really enjoyed baseball, being with his teammates. And I think that's one thing I respected about Hank Aaron, is not only as great of a ball player he was, as good of a person he was, and he really enjoyed everybody. He would talk to you. He was just a great guy, but what a great honor to be a part of his career and pitch in some really special games that meant a lot to Hank Aaron.
Augie, great job this morning. I really appreciate your time.
Anytime. It was great being with you. It's great for the season to start now. I'm looking forward to a great year, and Brewers got off to a great start with a 3-1 lead against those Mets in New York. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I love the game of baseball, and I have my part in baseball. I do some radio for the Brewers, so really looking forward to it.
We'll be following you. Jerry Augustine from the Milwaukee Brewers, 1975 to 1984. Until next week, happy collecting to all.